Let's get things going. Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. CEC 15th April calendar meeting and joint President's Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, April 29th. I am President Antonia Martinelli, and I'll be calling this meeting to order at 6:39 p.m. We're coming to you from PS 321, absolutely beautiful new space where they have their lower grades. I was completely floored when I walked into the building at how beautiful it is. I'm so glad that we could make this work. So I'm going to ask anybody who is here in person to please lower the volume on their devices and mute themselves. And please sign the attendance sheet at the table by the door. And anybody who is here on Zoom, I'm going to put a link in the chat for you. Not muted. Oh, that's me. Somebody. Okay. All right. I'm going to pass it over to my interpreters to please introduce themselves. Let's start with Mandarin, please.
Hi everyone, good evening. 各位家长晚上好，如果需要国语翻译的，请打专线电话347-966-4114，密码呢是967-712-326，输入密码后请再按井字，然后我在聊天室会再打一遍我们的电话号码和密码。Thank you. The Mandarin is done. Thank you.
The following announcement will be in Bangla. শুভ সন্ধ্যা বাংলা ভাষী যারা আজকের এই অনুষ্ঠানে উপস্থিত আছেন এই অনুষ্ঠান বাংলায় শোনার জন্য অনুগ্রহ করে ডায়াল করুন 347-966-4114 আমি আবারও বলছি 347-966-4114 এর পরে আইডি চাওয়া মাত্র ডায়াল করবেন 933-662-660 এবং হ্যাশ সাইন আমি আবারও বলছি আইডি চাওয়া মাত্র ডায়াল করবেন 933-662-660 এবং হ্যাশ সাইন ধন্যবাদ Bengali announcement is over. Thank you.
Okay, and Spanish?
Good evening, everyone. Buenas tardes para todos los participantes. Si necesitan interpretación en español durante la reunión, por favor marquen el siguiente número, línea de interpretación 347-966-4114. ID de la reunión es 754-013-999. Nuevamente, si necesitan interpretación en español durante la reunión, por favor marquen el siguiente número, línea de interpretación 347-966-4114, ID 754-013-999, seguido de la tecla numeral. Muchas gracias. Announcement is done.
Thank you so much. And would our secretary please call the roll?
Councilmember Antonia Ferrer.
Here.
Councilmember Leslie King. Here. Councilmember Vanessa Gonzalez Uelka. Councilmember Nancy Cruz is present. Councilmember Katina Rogers. Here. Councilmember Jonathan Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Hamza Dieta. Councilmember Donaldo Chunley. Councilmember Nancy Randall. And Councilmember Kwame Egerton. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, I think Kwame was going to be on his way, so we do not have quorum.
We don't have quorum. We're one shot.
Okay. All right. All right, Leslie, would you read the introduction?
Thank you for coming to the District 15 Community Education Council tonight. We appreciate your time and we're glad to join us. For those of you who are new to the CEC meeting, there are 32 CECs throughout the city. plus 4 citywide councils. Each CEC represents a community school district, and each is made up of 12 volunteer members, 10 who are elected by president, parents in the district, and the remaining members are appointed by the Brooklyn Borough President and 2 high school student members. CEC 15 is a state mandated public body responsible for ensuring that public school parents and the public have input in educational decisions that are made at the school district level. Our council reviews education policies and advocates for high quality education that benefits all of our District 15 public elementary and middle school students. CEC 15 serves 38 elementary and middle schools, 3 pre-K sites, and 1 high school under the oversight of our superintendent. CEC members serve in an advisory role on education matters to the district superintendent, the chancellor of the Department of Education, and to the state and city elected officials. We approve district and school zoning lines submitted by the Department of Education. We evaluate our district superintendent. We review the district's educational programs, and we support school leadership teams. We also present recommendations for school construction authority's annual capital plan. And as of recent amendments to the law, CEC advised in the selection of parent coordinators. We actively seek input and feedback from the public and encourage you to visit our website, cecd15.org, and write to us about any issues you may want to discuss or learn about. Each school has a CEC liaison, and all of our names and contact info are available on our website. Also, remember to sign the attendance sheet at the entrance.
Jonathan, before you jump in, people are mentioning that it's hard to hear because of the echoiness of the room. I wonder.
Well, we could just speak louder.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah.
we could also use this mic.
We have found in the past that when we use the additional mics, there's interference with the Zoom.
Okay.
Talk louder.
Okay. Tonight's calendar meeting is in person and will include a public comment period. We will take both remote and in-person comments to gather additional feedback from our families and school community members. You may leave your camera on, or for your own privacy, if you prefer, you may use audio only during the comment period and throughout the meeting. Rules of engagement. When you comment, please comment on the topic. Respect the privacy of others, and please do not include names of children or staff. Guests who make inappropriate comments will be removed from the meeting. During the public comment period, those attending virtually may raise their hand to comment or indicate in the chat that they would like to speak. Those called upon will be unmuted. If you are attending in person, you must sign the guest attendance sheet and indicate whether you would like to comment. Speakers will be called on one at a time and will be allowed 1 minute each for comment. We will hear as many speakers as the time allows. It is possible that not every comment and/or question will be given time. So the best way to get your question answered is always to write to the CEC at cec15@schools.nyc.gov. CEC members will also be given a comment period. Members will be called upon and are each permitted 1 2-minute comment and/or question. If members do not have a comment, they can cede their time to the chair.
Thank you so much, guys. So yes, welcome to PS 321. We are in Principal Liz Phillips' space, and would you mind talking about your school a little bit?
Yeah. Where is it best for me to?
Sure.
Well, first of all, welcome everyone. It's so nice to have people here. I want to just introduce my assistant principal, Sarah DePrey, who is on the section, our parent coordinators, there are 4. We have school cards here in the back, and Katie, our PTA co-president. I mean, this is a very exciting year for us, having a new space. It was not easy moving all of our classrooms when we only had access to this building in the end of August. But it has worked out really beautifully. I mean, there have been, the building is beautiful. There were a few things that were not really done properly. As you can see, they spent a lot of money making this room beautiful, which we do appreciate, but I think we would have rather had working bathrooms. So, there are those kind of issues, but we're getting there. We're getting certain problems solved. And this building houses our pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade. And until this year, we did not have pre-K or 3K. So certainly one of the highlights of the year has been opening those 4 classes. And they are phenomenal, and we are so thrilled to have pre-K and 3K here. That has been great. We're also really happy to have more space, especially because of reduced class size funding. We did receive funding for next year for reducing class size in 3 grades. And because we're very large, we have over 1,300 students now. It means to reduce class size, we're reducing in first grade, second grade, third grade. First and second grade, we're adding 2 classes. Third grade, we have to add 3 classes in order to meet the 20 in a class mandate. We're also adding ICT classes to second and third grade because the ratio means we can only have 8 kids with IEPs in each of those classes. But we're very excited about that. It's another year where we're going to be hiring a lot of people and relying on support from our parents, who are really wonderful and help us with moving, because we're also going to have to move rooms around. OTs out of one room, move all different things will happen. So that's been a big focus of this year, is just adjusting to having 2 spaces and trying to maintain a sense of community that we really value in 321 when we're 3.5 blocks apart. So just as an example of some of the kinds of things we've done, last week on Earth Day, all of our kids in both buildings learned this song, This Pretty Planet. The music teachers taught them, and all of the lower school children and staff came to the upper school, to the backyard. We had 1,300 something people in the backyard. We weren't sure how it would work out because we've never done that before. And our music teachers were leading the singing, the keyboard. It was really beautiful. And then one of the things we've done to maintain a sense of community is have all of our classes in this building have reading buddies in the upper school. So after the sing-along, many of the buddy classes did special things together, whether it was playing outside or going up to the classroom. So that's, our big challenge is really trying to make sure that we're still one school, one community. In terms of what we believe in, our philosophy, we have always felt that although we are very committed to a rigorous academic program, we're also really committed to meeting the diverse social emotional needs of our kids and to making learning joyful. We want our kids to love school. We think that that is the way to get them to excel academically if they have positive feelings about school. So we have many different things that we do to make that happen. Last week I was at a celebration in a 5th grade class of their book clubs. They had social issue book clubs, and they combined 2 classes, divided them in half, and each book club had done a slideshow on what they had learned, presented to kids from the other class. So a lot of opportunities for inquiry-based learning, for art. If you saw it in the lobby, you saw our quilt celebrating Black Lives, piece of the quilt in many different squares. So really making sure that our kids have a really well-rounded education, that we have art, we have music, we have physical education, we have trips. We really value social studies and having, really complex social studies projects. at the same time that we teach kids to read. And foundational literacy has been really important to us. We have trained many of our early childhood teachers, grades K to 2 plus, our ICT teachers across the grade in Orton Gillingham through attending week-long institutes, which the PTA has supported, and that has made a huge difference in our school. So, we feel like it's been a great year. I can't believe it's almost May. It feels impossible. It's going so quickly, but we're looking forward to another great year next year.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So, tonight is our, joint President's Council meeting, and, we have one of our co-presidents. Oh, speak louder, okay. We have one of our co-presidents, Elton Dodson, here, and, the other President's Council co-president, Liz Sanders, is on the call, I believe. She's waving, okay. And I will turn it over to you to.
Thank you so much, Antonia. It's an honor to be here with the CEC tonight for another joint meeting. It's good to see everyone, and we treasure our working relationship with the CEC. I want to talk to you about the President's Council. For those of you that don't know about us, the President's Council is the organization that is comprised of all of the presidents of all of the parent associations and PTAs in District 15. And for those of you that may be listening that have been recently elected, please put it on your calendar to be a part of the President's Council starting now and into next year. We recognize that the job of a PTA president is challenging and takes a lot of time. Know this. So it is okay for you to designate someone else on your executive committee to be the representative that comes to President's Council meetings. So however it works best for your particular school and organization, please be a part of it. It's always been important, but now, in the coming years, and right now, in education in New York City and in the country, it is extraordinarily important for all parent leadership to be engaged, talking to each other, and a part of the process of creating joyful, safe learning environments for all of our kids, and protecting the values that we have built over the years through some very difficult challenges, and that would include the District 15 diversity plan. So anything that's going on in your community, and when you're talking to parents, my youngest, I can't believe this, I put 2 children all the way through New York City public schools. My son is going off to college in the fall. I'm gonna tear up in a second, but it's okay, I got one left. I got one left, and she's going to middle school in the fall. So it's extraordinary, the experience that I've had, and such an honor to be able to, like all of you, volunteer some time to be part of what we're creating for our kids. And speaking of middle school, going back and mentioning the diversity plan, which I love to say this all the time, you're looking at one of the heroes of the diversity plan right here, Antonia, and the CEC was, yes, absolutely.
One of many.
The Community Education Council was central to that effort, and will be central in continuing to protect it. And let's not kid ourselves. Things like the diversity plan, which for those that are familiar with it, modernized our middle school admissions process and started us on the path combating the historic and deeply pronounced segregation in New York City public schools, creating opportunity for all of our kids in our district, and providing a model for not just New York City public schools, but for the country on how you can continue to push excellence in schools, but excellence for everyone, for all of our children. So when you're involved in your community and when you're, say, voting in city council elections, or you're taking part in elections for CEC, or just talking in your schools, always ask people, hey, how do you feel about a District 15 diversity plan? It's kind of a threshold issue for us and everything that we created in our community. So as a PTA president, not excluding all of the other people that are here on the meeting tonight, but because I am here representing the President's Council, email one of us. You can email me for the time being until I'm replaced at president@ps295.org and ask to be put on the Google Groups list for the District 15 President's Council. That's your first step to making sure you're plugged into information. So you won't be alone, especially if you're a new president, or maybe this is your first time on the EC, or you just need support. Being part of a larger organization that can provide the voices of all the other presidents that are going through the same things you are, facing the same challenges, supporting your principals, your staff, and your kids. The President's Council is an invaluable resource for that. For example, and then I'll stop talking, this last year, the President's Council has expanded its reach and tried to become a more proactive organization that reaches out to all of our schools. We partnered with City Council, this year Shahana Hanif's office, to put on the only PTA district-wide fundraiser that we currently have, although we are looking at making more of these. And that would be the fun run that's held every year in Prospect Park. We partnered with Councilmember Hanif's office to make sure that, we are doing our part in pushing out these opportunities for PTAs to raise money. And this one is targeted towards distributing money for Title I schools. So being part of the President's Council is essential to building parent representation and power. And I'd like to believe that our superintendent and deputy superintendent and the incredible leadership staff we have at District 15 appreciates the partnership because it extends their ability to come into our communities and provide resources to our schools. So thank you again for having us. Your space is beautiful. Congratulations. Thank you all.
Thank you, Elton. Did Liz want to speak as well, or? Liz, did you want to say hi?
I think she said she.
I'll
You
say
don't
hi,
have-
but I don't have anything else to add. Elton covered it, but good to see everybody.
Okay, great, thank you. So April is Arab American Heritage Month, and as always, I have some culturally responsive books here. I have Halal Hot Dogs by Susanna Aziz. It's about a family who, after their Friday prayers, always goes out for a special meal. And Musa's favorite is halal hot dogs. And I chose it particularly because some of the illustrations look very familiar. It looks kind of like Park Slope. So that's one book. And then I have Bilal Hook's Doll by Aisha Saeed, which unfortunately was briefly banned in York, Pennsylvania for quote unquote depicting religious minorities and Islamic themes. The ban was rescinded after a year, but the book does depict an Islamic family, which as far as I know is still legal. However, I really feel the book is about sharing a delicious dish with friends and developing the patience to wait for it to be ready. So those are some books. April is also Autism Awareness Month, and I feel it's really important to rebuke some of the wrong-headed statements of RFK Jr., our U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services, who recently stated that autistic children will never pay taxes or hold a job. And we are doing this to our children, and we need to put an end to it. There is a spectrum of support needs amongst those diagnosed with autism, and even those with greater support needs can live full lives. It seems that RFK Jr. views autistic children as a societal burden. The executive director of the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, in fact, characterized the remarks as eugenic when taken together with the proposed autism registry. I know that families are concerned with this idea of a registry. We have heard from some of them. So let's not write off the lives of our autistic children, particularly when there's so much we can do as a society to improve the lives of everybody with differences. Fortunately for now, it seems that HHS has reversed course on this misguided registry issue. Some updates, there have been some curriculum changes. The mayor announced curriculum changes to reading and math for middle schools. District 15 is not in phase 1 of these changes. So I will put a link to an article about that. He also announced the city will hire 3,700 teachers at 750 schools throughout the city for the coming academic year. The money will go to schools that submitted the proposals for reducing class size. I know our superintendent's going to talk more about that later. I met with PS 107 last week. They're one of the 4 schools that did not receive the funding because the dynamics of the school necessitate things that were outside of the application process. And I know that 107 families want to know what the plan is for schools like them that simply don't have an inch of additional instructional space. We have some very good news at the building known as K293, which it's a school that's co-located with 4 schools, BHS, Digital Studies, D75 Star Academy, and Success Academy, Cobble Hill. Success Academy has voluntarily agreed to return 9 classrooms. The principals have met, and they are going to reallocate space amongst the 3 schools. Unfortunately, the building utilization plan will not be formally amended, but district planning assures me that the space is being returned in good faith. As you know, elections are underway. Voting was temporarily paused on Friday. We sent out a message through the CEC email address that it's possible that those who voted on Friday prior to the pause may need to vote again. We have our face representative here. Do you want to say something about that briefly?
Sure. So yes, we do, if you were the first 70 people who voted before it was closed, they are going to have to re-vote again.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just for equity, just to make sure everybody has the same amount of votes and nobody has greater than anybody.
Are those people going to be contacted?
They should.
Okay.
They should be receiving a phone call.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So voting period runs until May 13th. So get out there and vote for CEC candidates. We still have a vacancy, 2 vacancies on this council, one for the parent of an English language learner and another for the parent of a District 75 student. And parents can apply to the DOE directly for those seats. The panel for education policy vacancy for the Brooklyn seat has been filled. Dr. Miriam Benke Ellis has been selected to represent Brooklyn families on the PEP until the new term begins in July. CEC presidents will again convene to interview candidates and hold another vote for the new term, which begins in July. I anticipate more information to come on that. There is a PEP meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, April 30th at Sunset Park High School, which is here in District 15. Speaker sign up, as always, is at 5:30. And Teacher Appreciation Week is May 5th through the 9th. And National Teacher Day is May 6th. So appreciate the teachers. Librarians Equal Literacy has good news too. Their advocacy efforts are paying off. their bill is advancing, and on May 1st, it will get a vote. The majority of the council members, 29, co-sponsored their bill. So they are confident that it will pass. And they are asking folks to join them on May 1st at noon on the City Hall steps to celebrate their first major victory on the path to restore librarians in New York City schools. Big topic, the budget. Yesterday, they announced an agreement on the state budget. Hochul's bell-to-bell smartphone ban did make it into the final budget, so I'm looking forward to more information about how we're going to implement all that. The governor also said that the state will invest $37 billion towards education, but she did not provide any more information about foundation aid, and AQE is it's encouraging families to still call the governor to demand better foundation aid formula for New York City schools, because it seems that this matter of the foundation formula is not quite settled yet. Another issue that's on the horizon on a state level is our school-based health centers. On May 1st, the state is planning to require school-based health centers to be moved into the Medicaid managed care to receive Medicaid payments. And this is concerning because this transition makes school-based health centers subject to the whims of the federal government on the issue of Medicaid. And there is also concern that the Medicaid payments will be insufficient. So we do have some school-based health centers in District 15. Later on, you'll share with us who they are. And there is a link in my report on how to sign a petition to support those school-based health centers. New York City Ferry. The New York City Public Schools is partnering with the New York City Ferry to provide discounted ferry tickets to high school students. Families must access their ferry discount code through their NYXA account. I put a link in there in my report. I'm going to put this whole report link in the chat afterwards because it's long. And finally, my continuing segment called Federal Government Watch. New York State, is part of a group of states suing the federal government over Education Secretary Linda McMahon's decision to cut off hundreds of millions in COVID aid funds that school districts were expecting to have through next year. In New York's case, that meant losing out on $134 million that the state had planned to spend on programs that help homeless youth, facilities repairs, and additional classroom space, as well as library books, playground equipment, and wheelchair accessible buses. Since the last time we've met, the Trump administration has issued 2 new executive orders, one called Reinstating Common Sense School Discipline Policies. It seems that that executive order seems to encourage more suspension. And one called Advancing Artificial Intelligence for American Youth. But there is some good news. A judge issued a temporary injunction that blocks the Trump administration from penalizing states that don't sign the anti-DEI certification document, and from enforcing their February Dear Colleague letter. Recall that more than a dozen states have refused to sign the certification. So to keep up with all these federal actions and other education news, I recommend Lainey Hamson's radio show Talk Out of School. Her recent episodes cover the lawsuit to stop Trump from dismantling the Department of Education. And Lainey is going to be with us at our next business meeting, which is Tuesday, May 13th. And that concludes my very full report. All right. Let's move on to our superintendent's report.
Absolutely, will be here.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I have my badge turned up. Turn around every now and then, okay? So whenever we're ready, welcome, good evening. Really the first slide is really thinking about what we celebrate in the month of April. You've heard quite a few. One of the things we did miss is the National Poetry Month, where many schools participated in activities around that, and Earth Day as well. For those who celebrated Passover and Easter, hope you had an enjoyable holiday, along with our American Heritage Month, which was celebrated today at Tweed as well, and April's Autism Awareness, as we're doing a lot of activities across our schools. In the next coming month, we're gonna have Happy Principals Appreciation Day, as you all announced, May 5th to the 9th is Teacher Appreciation, Jewish American Heritage Month, Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. A happy Mother's Day to those who are mothers or who have been mothers to all of us. A Memorial Day as well, and honoring and remembrance of those who have died to keep us safe and free. And then also it's Mental Health Awareness Month as well. So just making sure that we keep track of that in the month. As we go along, I'm going to go through some of the celebrations, but in the interest of time, the curriculum highlights is more about strategic planning. So rather than watch the 8-minute video on strategic planning, I'll let you do that at your leisure. It will be posted and it's also translated, so we'll have access to that if that's okay with everyone. Normally I show the video of the visits. I figured for this month, because it's such a long presentation, that we would skip that if that's okay. If you'd like to see it, we can. Some summer updates. I wanted to talk a little bit about the DCEP this year in terms of progress monitoring and where we are. I've already shared that with DLT. And some upcoming events and workshops. And then before I even move to the next slide, I want to give a huge shout out to our family leadership coordinator, Michelle Ortiz, who's done a phenomenal job with our PCs and with our schools. And we talked about NISCA accounts, and for me, NISCA accounts are a matter of equity. If you don't have access or you're not on it, you have less access to be able to be part of the system decision making. For example, voting for CEC members to be on the CEC committee that helps make decisions in partnership with the superintendent. Being able to access other things like their students' attendance and grades and other things that they would have access to. And so Michelle has been working diligently with our PCs to ensure that PCs are upping their numbers. So rather than, for example, traditional PCs that would send out flyers to parents about these things, Michelle has been holding the PCs accountable with charging them of thinking about percentages, increments. And so saying something like, you have to increase, your goal is 5% for the next month. And what does that mean? That means 3 accounts per week. So that would mean 12 accounts, whatever it might be. And then the school can actually have the PC now target those 12 parents as opposed to mass message that goes out to parents, so that there's also a more personable relationship amongst the PCs with parents who may not necessarily or traditionally be a part of being fully engaged for whatever reasons they may have. Some of them are overnight workers, some of them don't have access at certain times, they're far away a part of the city when schools are in session. So making sure that we have other ways to access our parents in our community. I also want to thank Liz and Elton in terms of President's Council, and I put this charge to Liz yesterday at the DLT about how we, District Office and President's Council in partnership with CEC, are going to think about more strategic ways that we're partnering in thinking about how we move the district. So I heard you talk a lot about the fun one, and what are some other ways we can do those activities. I think we need to sit down to really come up with some other ways. So I charged Liz, who's on the computer, to talk to the President's Council about what are some possible ways for us to do that as a district. So I just wanted to point those things out. But in the next slide, some of our celebrations. Our District 15 Lion King, we presented this at Prospect Heights High School. Phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal. I'm not sure if you're aware. Also, I also want to thank Brooklyn High School of the Arts, the picture on the left top corner, where we had their band actually performing as families were coming in. So we had light entertainment before we actually went to the production. So it was amazing students who performed at the high school, but the students itself from grades 3 through 12 across all of our schools in the district. Phenomenal, phenomenal cast. I don't know if you're aware, but the cast also got to meet actual actors from the actual Lion King. And tomorrow they're meeting for their celebration. I'm going to announce something, so I'm going to hold off on the announcement until May, as I want them to be aware of those announcements going forward. But then the next slide, that's the packed auditorium on the left. That's Prospect Heights High School. They have a balcony, the whole bottom floor and the top floor full. Those were our cast members all the way on the left. And I have to thank Neil Singh, who's our district attendance coordinator and liaison for the arts, who's done a phenomenal job with the parents. So those who are standing there with me are parents who are volunteering their own time, working with our kids in the production. So thanking them for all the work they have done. They've really brought my vision into beyond the reality of what I expected. So I want to thank everyone who's part of that. Our next slide talks about our District 15 high school students. They formed their first chapter in New York of Global Council for Science and the Environment. So representatives from Brooklyn Arts High School, as well as Boerum Hill International High School, 2 students are going to be representing in Chicago in June and presenting their projects. So we're excited about that work that our high school students are doing that is being recognized not only within our local city, but nationally. The next slide. We were able, Boerum Hill, as well as PS 94 and 958, were able, on the next slide, were able to host Teach Michigan. So this is Teach for America and Teaching Fellows that are primarily in Detroit, but also in the outskirts of the Detroit area, who were able to come visit our schools to see instruction, particularly for students who are the most vulnerable, which is why you have the different populations that they visited, and trying to figure out how do they help up the rigor and academic success at their individual schools across the city of Detroit in the state of Michigan. And so we hosted approximately 60 different teachers, administrators, parents from the state of Michigan who came in to see the practices as their conference was held here in New York City. And I wanted to give a shout out to Samantha Schmager, Christina Gonzalez, and Emily Shapiro, who left these staff members flawed at what can be done with a child who might be in an AIMS program or an ACES program, who might be special needs, and how we are able to still get kids to be able to do grade level content work despite some of the challenges the students may be facing. And so they were just a shout out to that. And the next slide. Brooklyn Arts High School was also honored by the office OSYD, which is one of the offices in our city, the Office of Safety and Youth Development. And it was specifically about the work that they've been doing with social and emotional learning and wellness in terms of how they're engaging the high school students, not only in their academics, in the arts, but also in who they are and how they're identifying themselves as young adults. And so excited that they were honored with that. On the next slide, that PS 230, 5th grader Celine Chen art piece accepted at PS Art 2025 is a big success because not many art pieces get to be presented at this location. And so one from our own 5th grade student has been phenomenal and a lot of boosting of feelings about herself and who she is. I just wanted to touch that as well as the Lion King. So there have been some scenarios in our cast of Lion King who felt like they were outliers, not feeling a part of something. And since putting this together, not only have they been feeling a part of something, but they feel a sense of pride in themselves. And now we have children across the district who may have never been play dates or friends and hanging out in different communities and neighborhoods, actually visiting one another and seeing each other and going on play dates with their families and friends and stuff like that. And so that's connected to the vision of the diversity plan, to taking it a step further than just the middle school admissions process, but how do we start engaging our students as early as elementary school, all through high school, and engaging them in other ways. So we're happy about that. On the next slide, we have the 2025 Respect for All. We're honoring PS 10, 29, and 321 in recognition of the work that they've been doing to create a safe and supportive environment, but also free of discrimination, harassment, intimidation, and bullying. So they're being awarded for that in terms of the schools for this year, 2025. So we go to the next slide. Go ahead, I already talked about that. There again, we're gonna pass this, but when you watch the video is going to be about how the schools are using strategic planning to help plan for not only the remainder of the year when students are struggling, but also for next year. We have some summer school updates. The biggest summer school update is on the next slide. The last day to accept summer rising offers is Thursday, May 8th. So families need to make sure that you accept your offer and answer any required questions to ensure your child's seat. If the child loses a seat, it could possibly be offered at a later time, but at the moment, they will lose their seat to other students who may want a seat at that particular site. I just want to be clear about that. Any information about Summer Rising is linked there, so you're welcome to click on the link. And these are the dates. So the last day to accept the offer is May 8th. Results and wait lists are already available in my school, so families should be able to see that as early as last Thursday. Next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the DCP and where we are as it relates to the middle of the year data, not necessarily the end of the year, but I want to give you a heads up of where we are. In terms of the ELA priority, we were focusing on proficiency rate for K-2 English language learners between 29 to 32%. We're currently meeting the target as where you see the middle of the year, the 28% is of students that are at or above benchmark. It says 28%, but we're meeting the target because as of right now, when that data was taken, it was 28%. We had finalized the assessment later, so there's more students that are accounted for that. In terms of proficiency for K-2 students with IEPs, we want to go from 23 to anywhere between 23 to 26%. We're almost meeting the target. So just want to give you that. I'm not going to read through each one of them, but I just want you to be aware that we are monitoring and measuring what progress we're making as it relates to the different subcategories of students that we're looking at as it relates to closing the achieving gap for particular students across our district. So the next slide. You'll see similarly with supportive environment, where we're reducing the number of EMS transport, suspensions, incidences. Our baseline for incidences as it relates to level 1, 2, 3, which are the lowest levels, versus levels 4 through 5. We're currently meeting the target by the percentage points in terms of how we're reducing the number of incidences. And that has to do largely a lot with Zach and Donna, who are on our team. They're the student service managers who have been working in partnership with our schools to support them in figuring out more restorative ways to support students across their schools. And I also want to thank central partners of the Restorative Justice Office, as well as some of the other divisions within OSYD that have actually come to our district to provide additional supports to our schools. So suspensions, we wanted to decrease suspensions for our Black students particularly, as well as for students with disabilities. And we've been able to decrease quite a few of these things despite the uptake across our city around students and some of the things that may be going on with them. And I can talk about those at a later time. Next slide. Our priority 3 in math, we're almost meeting the target as it relates to students with IEPs. And we have met the target with our English language learners so far. So far as it relates to the college and career readiness, we're measuring the IPRs, which are the individual progress monitoring that's supposed to happen with each individual student at the high school level, middle school and high school level. Our goal is to get to 96% by the end of the year. Currently, our baseline is 95%. We're almost meeting that target. We're not there yet, but they still do have until the last day of school. Our challenge was to make sure that this was an ongoing process that was going on throughout the year, as opposed to waiting to enter them all at the end. When I first became superintendent, we were at like 0% still at the end of May, and part of it was because people were not entering it into the system, so we didn't know when it was happening. And our executive director, Keys, she's been focusing on monitoring our middle schools and high schools to ensure that this is an ongoing process and not a last minute process. And so we're happy about that. And then we're on target with meeting the goal around K-3 students participating in financial literacy from 85% from 0. And so next year, we're expected to add more grades to priority 4 around career and college readiness. Next slide. And then parent engagement. We are almost meeting the target as it relates to the district town halls. We've done 3 of the 4 for languages with a minimum of 4% of attendance using the services measured by feedback and attendance. The other thing that we've met our target with, and you'll see, is that we were expecting to provide at least 2 workshops this year that were in another language first, so that we're honoring the other languages that we speak in our district. So some of those workshops are being held in, for example, Spanish or Chinese, and people can listen over translation in English. And so we've made commitments to ensure that we're doing that, and we're on target for that. We also have increased the number of participants in the town hall that we said we were going to set out to host and have across our district. So we're happy about that. Next slide. And then chronic absenteeism. This has been a contested city thing. And we're happy to say that in District 15, we're actually meeting our targets. Currently, right now, we're at 19.6% chronic absenteeism. We're way below the city's average in chronic absenteeism. And part of that is due to, again, Neil Singh, but also our attendance teachers. One of the things that we've been doing with our attendance teachers is paying them per session to go to families' homes in the evening and also on the weekends. And we've been seeing that when we do send them on the evenings and the weekends, it's been a drastic change for those students for the following week in terms of attendance. And so we're continuing to do that work, particularly in focusing in more also on the students in temporary housing and the foster care system as well. And so we're seeing increases. We're also 1% increase from last year. So last year we were at 92.3. This year so far we're at 93.3. And that's despite the month of February and March, the month of January, February, and even early March, where we had a spike in absenteeism as a result of the fears of the policies that were set forth by the federal government. And we've now been able to gain the trust through the use of not only the attendance teachers, but our parent coordinators and also classroom teachers who've been involved in ensuring families that they're going to be safe in our schools. And so families are starting to feel that again. And so we're starting to see our numbers even out between anywhere between 93.1 and 93.9%. Today was 93.7% attendance. And so we're happy to see that. We're also reducing the percentages for our disadvantaged Hispanic students and our Black students. And our goals were certain number of percentage, and we've been able to move it. With a district that's this large, 1% is a lot of kids as it relates to this level. So we're happy that so for our teachers, between 19.4 and 19.6% chronic absenteeism for District 15. We rank number 4 out of all 45 districts. So right now, which is an increase from last year where we ranked number 5. Next slide. Class size matters. So when you click on the next slide, we have 26 of our schools submitted applications. That's an 85% were approved, which means 22 schools were awarded funding. As a district, we're going to need 107 teachers for this district. That's just new teachers for the additional expectations to meet class size reduction. Out of the 22 schools, 10 of the schools, as a result of getting awarded the teachers for the class size reduction, will be at 100% class size reduction. 2 of the schools will be above 90%, so that's a total of 12. The other 10 schools will be above 60%. That's still above the city's average of the expectation. So right now, at the end of this year, we're expected to have 40%. We were already at 42% last year. We will definitely meet the expectation for this year for our district. Remember last year I told you that they asked us as a district to increase by 3%. We've increased by more. I just don't have that percentage yet because we have to still tally up students who are coming in, coming out, and we still have a lot of transfers when it comes to that. So we're able to get that information towards the end of the year, usually by August, once the numbers are cleaned up. So I'll be able to report that in September. 4 schools did not get awarded funding. You heard Antonio talk about those 4 schools. 107, 172, 230, and 497. Some of the reasons behind it was in this year's application, you couldn't reduce your enrollment as a result of this, because then that would mean we would lose students as a city, right? And schools can't afford that either. So we didn't want to reduce enrollment. You couldn't reduce or remove G&T and or pre-K, 3K. That's just for this year. And then some places had space limitations. For example, 493, which you just heard, are being awarded 9 classes. I believe 7 of those classes will, at this point, is going to go to BHS. 1 to 2 of those classes will be going to digital tech, and 1 class will be going to D75. At this time, from the conversations that happened last Thursday in building council. The other schools are still in the works. I am working with 107 collaboratively. We've tried a few things, SCA and a few other things. It's important to keep in mind that the city's expected to get to 100% by the year that they're supposed to get it to 100%. It's not by each district individually. So the city's considered one district for New York State. So when we're looking at class size reduction, it's the whole city aiming towards the same goal. Each district has been given its own expectations by the city to improve on, because if everybody improves, then we get closer to that goal. I would expect that next year we will get to the 60%. There will probably be another application process for some of the remaining schools. I would also expect, and you heard Chancellor Banks talk about it, and you also heard Chancellor Aviles Ramos. There may be in some cases where some schools may be able to get exemptions in partnership between the chancellor, the UFT, as well as CSA to make decisions about exemptions. I don't know exceptions. I don't know what that looks like yet because that we haven't gotten there yet. This time right now, what we're working on is getting towards each year's expectation. Next year is 60%. So right now, as a district, we're doing very well compared to some of the other districts as it relates to class size reduction. The funding for the teachers are there. If you would like, I can share information about how many teachers each of the schools are getting within our district. Just to note, 2 schools will also be getting assistant principals that they don't have to pay for out of their regular budgeting because that's being funded through the class size reduction matters, right? That is PS 58, who currently has only 1 AP and they've always had 2. But because they're a non-Title I school, it's very difficult and with their high teacher salary, so they're being awarded assistant principal, and also PS 39, which is a smaller school, high salaries, non-Title I school. They're also getting assistant principal. What I didn't share with you is what the SAM is, School Allocation Memorandum. The School Allocation Memorandum will come out later in the spring, primarily when the budgets come out. Usually we always ask and hope that we get our budgets in May. Principals will tell you, for whatever reason, it still ends up coming out in June. When they get their budgets, there will be a SAM allocation. The SAM allocation for each school, some schools will get partial, some schools will get full amount based on their individual applications. So, for example, Liz Phillips had put in her application that she also wanted a 6-period prep, or she needed per diem funding to cover for substitute teachers for absence reserve. They would have reviewed that and determined whether or not she's getting money for that. If she does, in the spring, she'll be able to see it in her budget. That's going to be coming out at a later time. I think right now what they did was they wanted to have the schools, at the very least, have the opportunity to know how many teachers they're going to need. As a result of all this, we're hosting our District 15 hiring fair at PS 456, which is on State Street off of Flatbush Avenue. We're doing it there across the district because that is the easiest place for everyone to get to, whether they're coming from Manhattan, which we want, whether they're coming from New Jersey, which is what we want, whether they're coming from Long Island, which is the Long Island Railroad, or right there, which is what we want, or anywhere in Brooklyn because all the trains go to that area from buses, which is why we're hosting it at 456. Principals will already be there, and assistant principals will already be there for the principals conference that day. So they will be able to have the event between 5 to 7, and we'll already get a lot of teachers. I was just at an event for my niece's 2nd birthday on Long Island, and already I was recruiting 2 or 3 people who we sent the flyer to, who will be coming to our hiring fair. So we want them from any and anywhere with the licenses. Some people are coming back. Deirdre just found someone who's coming back from Canada to live back in the US. And I found one in North Carolina who's coming back to New York. So we are actively recruiting and doing everything we can. We asked at CEC, which I thank you, Antonio, for having CEC post our flyer. But any of you who know teachers, any of you who know anybody who's looking to be a teacher, please share that. Any paraprofessionals you know from anywhere who are looking to be teachers eventually and want that opportunity, please share that information with us. We will have partnership with the UFT as well. So licensing will be there. So anybody who's missing something for their license can at least learn that they need to get their license. Finally on this, 3 schools in our district have the opportunity to hire what's called early hiring. This is usually left for districts that have hard to staff districts. District 7, many of the Bronx districts, some districts in Brooklyn like 23, and other districts. We have 3 schools that are able to do what's called early hire. 456, 958, and the Bishop Ford Pre-K Center. The reason why they have been able to do early hire is because they added 3K pre-K special ed classes in the middle of the school year in February. And so if their schools are looking to hire teachers, if they want to hire with an early commitment letter, if they hire them by June 13th, there are stipends that those teachers will be able to receive. I'll just give an example. If they have a special ed license, in addition to being hired and getting what a special ed teacher will be hired for in terms of salary, they would also get a $3,000 stipend. It's a one-time stipend that they can use for whatever, whether they're moving to New York State and that becomes the money that they use to be able to move back, right? So we're thankful that we at least have that, because oftentimes we don't get that. Next slide. Upcoming events. So we have our district hiring fair. I just talked about it. Please share with everybody that you know, because we'd love to see everybody there. My hope is to get hundreds of people there and ready to be hired, or at least ready to be interviewed by our schools. Our schools are excited about this because they were thinking about how are we going to get our teachers. I just talked to Liz earlier, and Liz said before coming downstairs, that's one of the things she was working on, getting her hiring committee together and thinking about the hiring process, because the sooner you think about hiring, the better chances you have of having the most qualified teachers in front of our students. Next slide. So in our next slide, you have the New York City Kids Rise. I just want to emphasize this for our community. The New York City Kids Rise is not something that is for just our most struggling families in our city. This is for all families in New York City public schools. Everyone has a right to this. And I want to also emphasize that just because you may have the means does not necessarily mean if you were to take this, that you would be taking away from other students. It is not. This is for all students, all families. I have relatives who have 529s with the state of New York. They're entitled to have this as well. They would not be taking away less fortunate families. In fact, they would be enhancing their family's ability to add more funding to it to reduce the cost for them. I heard Elton talking about his child going to college, and another one coming up that has a few years, but is going to be there sooner than you think. That funding is for them and for them to be able to access. And we want to make sure that all students have access to it, whether it's a 321 family, a PS15 family, a PS94 family, a 958 family, does not matter. Every family has access to this. There are no hidden attachments to this, even to our migrant families. These are accounts that belong to New York City. New York City doesn't release this information to anybody. These accounts don't go attached to students' social securities, tax identification numbers. This does not go to that information. This is New York City stuff that is given to the students once they turn 18. They are able to access this money for books, for travel, for materials, for housing materials, for tuition, whatever it is that they're going to need. I'm not sure if you're aware, but in the United States, any migrant family who's undocumented, once they finish 12th grade, they get 0 federal, state, or city funding to go to college. The only way they go is if they have the means financially to be able to pay for it. It's the only way. They don't get stipends, they don't get TAP, they don't get FAFSA, nothing. This is a resource. So Michelle Ortiz is also holding PCs accountable for helping to get more families onto accounts by being able to explain this. On May 1st, she's hosting in partnership with New York City Kids Rise a PD so that parents can get more information about what it is, what it isn't, and what it entails. This doesn't go on your taxes. You don't have to claim on any of this. You don't have to pay taxes on any of it. There is no expectations other than if you want to add to match, and they will talk about that at a later time. Next slide. We have our family workshop. This is one of our workshops about helping kids be prepared for learning even during the summer. It's going to be hosted, this one is going to be hosted in Mandarin on May 2nd. The next slide. We have our STEM Exploration Day, which is at Harbor High School on Governor's Island. We expanded it from the grades that we had before to now 4th grade through 12th grade. We're excited about the STEM Expo. I know there was one or two concerns that came about with the questions that were being asked. We're monitoring, and we thank the families for the feedback and thinking about how do we change it for next year. Next slide. Another family workshop. This one's going to be spoken in Spanish first and can be translated. This is a similar PD around how do we support our students in the summer to ensure that their reading and mathematics and motivation and activities are there for them, so that there's less learning loss throughout the summer. Next slide. Community Education Council, I'm not going to go into this, but if you did vote prior to it closing last week, you must vote again. It was shared today from base that families are going to be notified by telephone that's attached to the NISCA accounts. If you haven't done so already, I urge you to please go out and vote for your next CEC, who will work in partnership with myself, district team members, and school leadership to shape the direction that District 15 continues to go. Next slide. This is just an example of how we are holding ourselves accountable for increases in numbers, but each school is getting one of these. So when it came out to the school survey, when it came out to the NISTA accounts, when it comes out to the New York City Kids Rise, PCAR, let me just tell you what PCAR is. PCAR is what justifies the parent coordinator's job to city council. PCAR was designed for city council members, for city council members to know what's actually happening that PCs are doing with families. And that's one antiquated way that they're collecting information. Nonetheless, the information they collect to justify the jobs for the PCs. We know that they do 1,000 things more, but we want them to make sure that they're actually filling these out and making sure that we can account for it. The NISCA accounts, as a district, we're at 82%. That just fluctuates from school to school. There's some schools that are 95%, some schools at 80%. When I look at the data, the most disenfranchised schools have the least amount of people signed on. So that's what this was about, to ensure that we're moving it. So as a district, Michelle's holding herself accountable for including 407 new accounts for the remainder of the school year. And we will hold her accountable to that. 12% of our New York City Kids Rise, we're trying to get it to 50%. That means she has to help activate 1,017 accounts. As it relates to the New York City School Survey at the time, we wanted her to increase it to 60%. So that meant she had to find ways to get the parent coordinators to get 1,482 more surveys by this Friday, which I believe she's reaching her goal because she's on it on a daily basis. Just want to give you an example of what we're asking PCs to do and how that helps create equitable opportunities for families that have been disengaged for so long in our system because they don't know how to navigate the system. And if they don't come to the school to ask or to forcefully request for their rights, then they're not part of that process. So now we're finding ways to actively engage for individual families. One of the ways to do that is to know who doesn't have an account, and I'm targeting these 5 families as opposed to sending a mass message to everyone, if that makes sense. I hope it makes sense. Next slide. Take the 2025 New York City School Survey. That's again, deadline was extended to May 2nd, so we're still putting a push. If you haven't completed the New York City School Survey, please do so. We know it's lengthy. Liz yesterday, as well as other members of the DLT, brought up that the survey this year is so long that it just turns families off. And so I've actually shared that information with senior leadership, and I'm also working with the office that creates the actual surveys to think about how they get less information that provides more information, if that makes sense. So we're trying to help get these surveys to a less invasive timing for them. Next slide. So I thank them for bringing everything up.
Thank you. So let's start with people here in person, because we have such an amazing crowd. Is there anybody that has a question or comment for the superintendent? Yeah.
And all of the state recognizes they can teach with that license. If they recognize that they can teach them. We'll have licensing teachers in the US be there, so those are directed to that table that have.
Raphael, can you repeat the question answer?
Oh, yes, the question was, are we looking to take intern teachers for next year? So my response was to come to the hiring fair. We will have UFT licensing people there who can answer those particular questions, but yes, we're looking for all teachers that we can. I would imagine they're going to allow for some waivers of some things, as we're going to be looking for licenses that we already struggled finding.
Any other questions or comments from people here in person? Okay. And continue to percolate and think about it. We move to Zoom. Anybody on Zoom who has a question or comment? So there's a question in the chat. I'll start with that. And that is, can the public attend PEP meetings? And can we get a copy of the superintendent's report?
Yes, so my report always comes on as a slide that the CEC posts. We usually post it in multiple languages. So you should be able to log on cec15.org. And on that website, you will see all of the actual monthly CEC meeting reports that I provide. And they're also provided in multiple languages. That's one. In reference to the second, it's also being placed in the chat so that you have access to today's. That's okay. And then the second question was, can families participate in the PEP? That's the Panel on Educational Policy. Absolutely. Those are public meetings open to the public. The public not only can attend, but if they sign up, can also speak. They get a 2-minute slot where they are able to speak whatever it is that they like to speak about. That's not just for parents, that's also for educators, non-parents who have comments and thoughts to provide to the New York City Department of Education, but it's a public open forum.
Yeah, and I'll just add, there is also a link in my CEC President's report to where you can just write in a comment to the PEP.
Yes.
Thank you. And Katina put the PEP meeting schedule in the chat. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from people joining on Zoom?
There is no question on the language line.
There is no question from Bengali line.
There's no question from Mandarin line.
Any other remaining questions before we move to CEC? Questions or comments? Okay, Donalda, we start with you. Any questions or comments?
I have some questions about the DC progress monitoring.
Mhm.
On page 19, I'm just wondering if I'm reading it correctly. The key performance indicators that the proficiency rate of K-2 students who are multilingual learners, or ELs, I guess, is identified here, is 28%.
Yeah, the number is a mistake. I was looking at that, and that's because I copied the wrong chart that's supposed to go on here, so I'll update that for you.
Okay, but what is the actual percentage of students in K-2 who are multilingual who are meeting?
Who are identified as ELs, right?
Right.
So the proficiency right now through the Acadians data in the middle of the year is at 19%. What we have done, and I think I shared this last month, was the chart where we divvied up by the language acquisition level. So what we did was, because just like the state, what happens is we recognize an L as being an L, but we categorize all L's into the same category, knowing that they're all at different places. So for example, an entering L with less than a year in the United States, we can't expect that they're going to be on grade level. And so, and the state doesn't expect that either, right? But they do expect that they're able to move in their nicest language acquisition levels. So what we have done was the city, where we look at the data, the city shows us the Acadians data for all L's. What we have done as a district, and I'll be happy to send that to you today, or actually I'll send it to you tomorrow. What we have done is we've taken our students and we've actually broken it up to their language acquisition level. So we have it as entering, emerging, transitioning, expanding, and then commanding, former L's, and then never L's, and then district students, to compare the progress students have made. And we have made as a district significant progress for L's, which is going to require us going forward to change the DCP language as opposed to saying overall L's, thinking about how do we break it down by the language acquisition level, because then that's easier to find the measurement of the progress that we're making with those particular L's.
Okay, thank you. My second question has to do with the proficiency rate of multilingual learner or L-identified students in grades 3 to 8. It's 13%. Is that accurate? So it's 19% for K-2 and 13% for.
No, we divided up those two numbers. I would have to get you those numbers to break it up, because when we look at the Acadians data and map data, it puts it all together. I would have to find the way to separate the two for you so to be able to see it. So let me just get those two numbers for you so that you can see them separately, and I'll get those to you tomorrow.
Okay, the other question is the proficiency rate of students in grades 3 through 8 who have IEPs.
Yes,
But the target on that table says, or in the second column, it says 45% of the students in grades 3 through 8 in the district are at or above benchmark. So is that for the entire population, or is that for students with IEPs?
that's specifically for students with IEPs across our district.
Okay, so 45% of students with IEPs in the district are at or above
Correct.
benchmark.
Yeah.
Okay, what is the total number of students in grades 3 through 8 who are meeting benchmark in English language arts at this time?
Yeah, I don't have that in front of me, so I'm just gonna have to email the.
It's so helpful to know the subpopulation data and also overall
Yeah.
progress.
I've only presented this month. Last month, I did present that information, so you could also find it in the last month's CEC slides.
Okay, that's very helpful, thanks. And then my final question has to do with math on page 21, where it says, students with disabilities beginning of year percentile at or below the 16th percentile, there's colon. And then the goal students with disabilities measured middle of the year, 35% below the 16th percentile. And I was hoping, I just was hoping to translate what that means.
So the beginning of the year, and you know, what happened was I had 3 more sections here that were gonna be convoluted. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna send you that. It's self-explanatory. It'll tell you what was used to measure, what was the measurement that was used for it. It will tell you the percentage of the beginning of the year where the students were. It will then provide you with what the middle of the year was and show you why we're either meeting or not meeting the target or almost meeting the target. So I'll forward that document to you tomorrow.
Thanks. I realize that thank you for indulging these questions. I just am wondering about the middle school curriculum transitions. I understand we're not in phase 1
Yeah.
yet, but the cabal continues to buy curriculum and to arrange business relationships with itself and its partners. What's next for middle school?
So that is not my perspective. That might be your perspective.
I understand. It's about, whatever stuff.
Understood, but yeah, that's okay, but I just want to clarify for me.
Okay.
That is your perspective.
Right. And responsibility.
And from my perspective, that's not what we are doing in 15, which is why we have not brought on to any additional curricula in ELA or our middle school. I'm not necessarily sure we're gonna even do that next year. This is a conversation that I have with principals and assistant principals and advisory to think about what are the steps that we're taking. Next year, one of the main steps that we're taking is focusing on K-2 foundational skills. More specifically, what are the things that we're doing for phonics and phonemic awareness for the students in K-2? And so while we're not gonna shy away from the curriculum that already exists, we're also gonna think more deeply about how we're making sure that teachers and administrators are provided support around Orton Gillingham's work around phonics and phonemic awareness, because we think that the more content knowledge those K-2 teachers have, the better chance the students are gonna have when it comes to reading. Certainly in middle school, I've been focusing on the IM curricula that was already indulged in this year, started last year, implemented this year, and continuing to go next year. So my focus for middle school is that. My focus for elementary is what I just shared. And so I don't see myself as a superintendent agreeing to take on yet another venture when we're trying to get through this first.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that sincerely. Thank you, Raphael.
Yeah, sure, of course.
I yield the floor.
I'll get you the information tomorrow.
Many thanks.
So thank you for all of this. I agree, it's a little hard to see the numbers without having.
Yeah, yeah.
to the park, but I understand that it's.
I shared that, I think I shared that yesterday with the DLT. What I'll do is I'll just send to the CEC. I think it was just, it was a little too complicated for parents, but in hindsight, I'm seeing that this is just complicated because we don't have the full
I
context.
appreciate all the work that you're doing and that you're here presenting it, so thank you. I just wanted to ask 2 questions.
Sure.
Well, one is more of a comment, in terms of level of incidence, a decrease in the level of
Yeah, yeah.
incidence. I just wanted to like, you know, kind of applaud the use of restorative justice and that the members have decreased, like I'm a big proponent of restorative justice and public schools do it great. So thank you, and thank you to everyone who's been putting that effort in. And, I had a question about, the schools that didn't get awarded money.
Yes.
For class size reduction. You mentioned something about like G and T.
Yeah, so right now, these schools have those particular programs. We're not gonna shut those programs down because
Is there a phase out plan?
not yet. And so this had to do with the application. Schools were initially told that in the application process, there were gonna be certain criteria that were not going to be favorable for their application, right? One of them was using in your application that you were going to try to close the G&T class. Another one was that you were gonna reduce enrollment. And then the third one was to displace for this school year, pre-K and 3K. Right, so those are three things that could have disqualified your application for this year. That's not to say that next year that won't be able to be part of the criteria, but to meet this year's threshold, remember what I had originally said, it's important to note that this is not just about D15, this is about citywide expectations to meet the state's requirement for class size reduction. So right now, the state.
So this is a state.
Yes, this is a state mandate on New York City public schools, because they put this mandate for class size reduction to the school district that has 1+ million students, right? Or I believe at the time it was, right? So Yonkers Public Schools, Ossining Public Schools, Syosset Public Schools, East Ramapo Public Schools, none of those school districts are required to meet class size reduction. So if you are a family who decides to move to Syosset and their class size happens to be 28, as long as they're within the state's guidelines, they're okay. That's not okay for New York City. So the law was really targeting New York City, and the intent behind the law was really to support the most disenfranchised students in the system. That was the intent behind it. Does it impact those schools? Yes, in many ways. With creating this class size reduction, right, from the state level, with the creation of the class size reduction, what happens to school districts who already had small class sizes, which is what this was intended for? Their teachers might end up now being pulled to districts like 15, who might be a sought-out district, too high, right? So, Nancy, it's important to like, those 4 schools, 107 is a space issue. But in her,
It's a small
right,
school.
and her application process, just because I have it, her application process, one of the things she wanted to do was reduce enrollment. Right, so in this year's application, that was unacceptable, because if we reduce enrollment, we're losing students in our schools, right? Because if they don't get into the zone school that they're entitled to go to, what do families do? They might choose to go to parochial school, they might go to private school, they might go to a different district, right? So that was one. For 172, it was the same thing, the size.
So I was particularly asking about G and T because
G&T,
you know, I have learned
Okay,
previously
got
that G and T, some of these classrooms do not get filled.
Yeah.
But yet the budget, they have to be made whole.
Yeah.
Like the money has to go to them, even if they don't have students sitting in those seats.
Yeah.
But yet.
So with the school we're talking about on here, the one that didn't get that, as a result of that, was 230,
That's.
right? Yeah.
Mayor, right? That's like a mayor.
Yes. 230 was the only school that had G&T as part of their process to be able to make room for class size reduction. It was the only school. 497 was a space issue. They just didn't have the space, and you just
But
heard.
G and Ts are like still like.
Yeah.
In the picture, even with the small.
Yes, it's under the policies of this administration, and so we have to follow the guidelines of this administration. Yeah. It was a way to provide access to families who wanted access to these particular programs. Which in fact, in District 15, we do have families who want the program. And so the mayor and the chancellor has made those programs available in every district. So we still have to abide by those policies. Yeah.
I also had some questions about the DCEP data, but I think I'll just wait.
Yeah,
because
just
you
wait
already-
till I give it to
yeah.
you, if you'll have it, yeah.
So I have 2 other questions. One, is a quick one, I think. I was interested to see the goal about having workshops that originate in languages other than English. When we hosted the Know Your Rights workshop, we had the opportunity to do Spanish first. We opted not to because if we did that, then my understanding was we could only have it translated into English. I didn't think that we could have it translated across from Spanish into Mandarin, for instance. And so is there capacity to translate outside of English, like to translate from Spanish to Mandarin, for
No,
instance?
that's why you saw the flyer show the
Uh-huh.
same workshop.
Yeah,
It just
so
had
we got
different
options.
flyers, yes.
Okay.
Right, so this is the Mandarin, for example, was
Uh-huh.
done in Mandarin. The same workshop has a different flyer that
Yeah.
was done in Spanish.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It
that
can-
was the stumbling
It
block.
can only be translated into the English, it can't be translated to the other languages, because
Right.
that would require us to have a translator who can speak multiple languages.
Yeah,
which
which
is
would be amazing.
Extremely
Right,
difficult,
right.
but it
No,
would be
I get it.
amazing, I
Yeah.
agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
That might be something we can look into,
for the most commonly spoken languages and.
because there are a lot of people who do speak
Great.
Spanish and Chinese,
Mhm.
Mandarin at least.
Yeah,
So that's something we can look into, I can look into that.
that would be amazing. My other question is whether you have a take on the city budget. I mean, I think it like just came out, right?
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. The largest amount of money does come from New York City.
Uh-huh.
So I would imagine, yeah, I don't, I just, I don't.
Crazy, therefore I shall not comment.
Yeah, that was a good one.
It's like, the budget folks came, thank God for Loretta, the whole thing. We had a presentation and like, it was sort of like, there's gonna be money that we may lose, whatever. Next CEC meeting, they had a full presentation that was like, alarm bells, like, oh my God,
Yeah.
why can't the DOE be as transparent and clear about what's actually happening as advocates can be shining light on the issue?
Yeah. Of course, you're gonna give me a question I can't answer, I don't know. No, that's okay.
It is
But-
question. I agree.
But in hearing you, Donalda, I understand the frustration. I can tell you that we have frustrations at all levels. Principals can tell you, they've been dying to see their budgets since probably January. Unfortunately, in our system, they don't get that until May, and they close our budgeting systems in February, March. It was a March, was it? For like a few weeks, so that they can refresh and clean up to make room for the next one. Some of that has to do with allocations, right? So for example, I have a Horizon program for middle school that's coming to 428. It's supposed to start in September. We have been approved for it. We're just waiting for the funding to come over. But we still don't know if the funding's coming over. And you could imagine there's a lot of craziness when it comes to federal government. And so funding has to do with the different levels. You heard Antonio talk about the state's budget and it finally starting to get approved. Well, we can't do anything until that money's actually trickled down into New York City's account. And so we can pre-plan, which is what's been happening behind the scenes, but we can't ultimately say until we know what monies have been placed in the budget. You are also aware that New York City has been advocating and fighting for something that it feels it's still owed as it relates to fair student funding. Now, the other issue that New York City is fighting is class size, where pretty much the only city that's expected to do class size, they're not changing the funding formula to the city as it relates to the money they're giving the city, but yet we still have to make room for class size, which requires hundreds and hundreds of more teachers. It's not just the hiring of the teachers, it also includes the fringes, it includes the medical benefits and everything that they're also entitled to through their unions, that is the bargaining between New York City and the unions. So it's a larger issue at hand that we're trying to address and face. So I think that's where the complication comes in, Donalda. And if we say this, then we have to commit to this, because then people are gonna be like, well, what happened to what you said you committed to? And the commitment was there, but sometimes the state makes the commitment and pulls its commitment, or the federal government makes a commitment, and as you're seeing across schools, districts across the country, those commitments are being pulled. I was just looking at a news thing yesterday where there was a district that's so poor that the school is functioning at lower level than what's expected for public schools in the country. And they were just about to get funding to be able to do the bare minimum repairs to boilers and things like that for their school district. And now the money's been pulled as a result of federal policies that have come out that put a hold on any money, grant money that was supposed to go to school districts. And so now that school district isn't able to really function in the winter, for example, because the heating doesn't go on, things like that. And we think we have problems, but across the country, there's some more rural districts that are having a lot more issues as it relates to the freezing of federal funds, in certain areas as it relates to grants that were being offered. So there's a lot going on, so all that to say, Donaldo, I can understand why the DOE has this particular issue, but I also understand from a parent perspective, if you tell us, we can help you advocate to get these dollars. So I get both ways.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I have two questions.
Sure.
The first question is, so schools like 107 who have these space issues that are just sort of
Yeah.
Seemingly intractable.
Yeah.
If they get an exemption, being an educator, do you see them being perceived differently by teachers who are looking for a job? Do you think it puts them at a disadvantage if they're a school that has the higher class size?
Realistically, for 107 as a high performing school with the resources that they particularly have, I don't foresee too many families thinking that it would benefit them to go to a different school. That's a personal perspective.
No, but the teachers.
Right. I don't see that either. Those teachers have been there historically for the longest time and they enjoy working. They truly enjoy working in that particularly small community. A lot of schools like to be small knit communities. I don't see it happening. However, from a parent's perspective, that might be a different thought process over time. What I can say about that particular school, for example, is I'm working on alternative things, right? So like, I know that, for example, there's a school that's not too far away from there that closed down as a pre-K program for a lot of reasons. I'm looking to see what aspects there could be so the DOE can actually purchase at least rent the space. Yeah, they just muted. At least rent the space, or leasing the space. I'm also thinking of other options. I've been negotiating, for example, with Bugs, which is a charter school in our district, thinking about alternative site for that particular school so that I can make room for another school, right? So like, I'm constantly working behind the scenes and I don't publicly say these things. And I guess this goes back to Donaldo's point, why I'm not as transparent sometimes with some of these behind the scenes conversations, because I don't want to get people's hopes up that something doesn't go through and then everybody's frustrated about it. So I'd rather be sure that I can do something before I actually mention that I can do it. So, but just publicly behind the scenes, I have been working on alternatives, finding another site. School construction authority cannot build on the current site there because it is a historic building. They can't do anything to the building itself. And so, and the space that's there is financially not sound to make one classroom per floor. It just doesn't make sense for the DOE to do that. So I'm looking for alternatives, whether it be the Catholic site that has the actual rooms that can be converted to classrooms and maybe moving K1, sort of like what we did here, right? I'm also looking at other alternatives. Are within a 10-block radius of that particular school, are there any empty spaces that the DOE can do eminent domain and purchase that particular land to create a school on? So I'm looking at a lot of different alternatives. Another alternative that I know no one wants to talk about, no one's going to want to talk about at all, we talked about this, partnership with the CEC about rezoning if necessary. That's going to open up a lot of can of worms, and I do recognize it. But if people are truly thinking about equity and commitments, you know, everybody talks about the word equity until it actually hits your front door and makes you have to change something as a result of it. And that takes a lot of courage. We may have to get to that route of courage. I just don't know yet. And so what I'm trying to do now is just trying to pave the way. I'm giving myself 3 to 4 years because I have to meet class size reduction by 2028, right? So by 100%. So I'm giving myself at least 3 more years to come up with a plan as it relates to the schools that I'm most concerned about, like one of themselves. Yeah.
The second question, the attendance teachers you spoke about doing the home visits on weekends and evenings. That's really interesting to me. Is that a common practice?
In District 15, it has been. Neil Singh has been able to convince the attendance office to use some of the STH money that comes into school budgets to be able to actually pay per session for those teachers to work after hours and go to the houses. It's been a great thing for our district. What I'll do, if we can just note for next month, to share the impact it's had, especially on our students in temporary housing as a result of this work that's been happening. Some other districts are doing it, not all districts are doing it, but certainly our districts. We've also been able to intercept on certain situations that are going on and also provide additional support to families as a result of what we're seeing or what has been happening. So, for example, some schools have walking school buses. Those are when school leaders, go to the area where the families live and pick up the children and bring them to school, recognizing that there might be barriers. Babies, so like, I'm not gonna bring out my baby when it's raining or pouring, right? There have been so many other, things. We've been able to provide social services to some of our particular families. We've been able to get them into workshops that help them, rather than calling ACS on them, saying, hey, we recognize this is a problem. Here's who can help you and support you in moving this work. And so we've been doing a lot of that work through the advocacy of the attendance teachers. They've also been able to establish a better relationship with, some of the families that we've been able to send them to. So that's been very helpful across our district. We still have about 3 or 4 schools that are lingering higher on the number of chronic absenteeism, and that's usually our families that have more students in temporary housing because of the conditions that they're in. Sometimes they have to be out of the building the whole time. Sometimes they're moved to one shelter to another, and that travel has been a barrier. The other thing that's been a barrier for us is OPT when it comes to pupil transportation. And so what happens is, because it takes 5 to 7 days to reroute a student, 5 or 7 days absence is already in one shot, because a parent can't come from, example, we have a student who comes from Brownsville to Red Hill, right? And they have that right. But the busing has been an issue and it's taking time. We're fortunate though in District 15 to have a great partnership with John Benson and Glenn Resbrook, who are the ones who are leading OPT, that when I have issues like this, I escalate them and they get resolved immediately. For the most part in District 15, they get resolved very quickly. I think we had a case last year with a student with a wheelchair. We got that resolved a little quickly. I've been able to do that because of the relationships I've established with people at other levels. But that becomes a barrier for a lot of our kids. And speaking of which, I forgot to give you one more piece of information that you had asked for at BLT yesterday. So we currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that fall within my district portfolio. School-based health clinics. That is, well, can't see. Middle school 136, PS 1, PS 24, PS 94. PS 15, and PS 169, all have a health clinic. The only school that doesn't offer dental and mental health is 169, but all the other schools offer dental, mental health, and primary care services. Middle school 136 provides reproductive health services as well. Because it's a middle school.
Who is the hospital?
NYU. We've been able to get all of them into NYU as opposed to some of the other like SUNY health clinics and so on and so forth. We have a great partnership with Larry from NYU. Whenever there's an issue, he provides a lot of support.
Thank you.
I'm Debbie.
I have one question and you don't even need to answer. But, so it's not about the specific numbers of the DCEP, but I was just curious if you could talk a little bit more about, we talked about some of the achievement gap. Areas and the work we were trying to do about it, but as you know, it's often the opportunity gaps that lead to the achievement gap. And so I was hoping you could maybe just talk more about in some of these subgroups, what you're doing to address the opportunities that have led to the disparity of achievement.
So we've been taking an MTSS approach. I shared that at BLT a little bit about the MTSS pilot. We've been taking an MTSS approach to understand the student from the social emotional level, but also what barriers are preventing kids from being able to access. What we started off with, we started off small. We have to really kind of gauge what's really going on. So Principal Figueroa from 676 to Harvard Middle School. She's working on her administrative certification as a district leader. And one of the tasks that we created with her, she's at Bank Street and also DOE leadership program, was that she had to create a project where she could improve something across our district. So what she decided to target was very specific. She decided to target English language learners who are at the emerging and transitioning levels, which is really about being able to read and be able to listen and speak. And she worked with those particular students specifically that also had IEPs. So these are English language learners with IEPs who are transitioning and emerging students to support them in improving on not only their NICE stat score, which is their language acquisition, but also their content level standard, grade level standards. She's been working with 5 schools currently right now, where she's been supporting those school leaderships in looking at the data and creating a plan to address the gap of those specific students only. And we're seeing some significant gains with those particular students. Last month, I shared with you the PowerPoint slide that talked about the English language learner. That's a perfect example of how you can see how we're making movement. While proficiency showed for our district from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year in the screener data, which takes all the way from grades kindergarten to 9th grade. What you don't see, because it was 19%, is growth. So anybody looking at that says, well, you're not making a difference for those kids. That's far from the truth. So the slide that we shared with you was to show you the breakdown of the different groups, the entering student, the emerging, the transitioning, the expanding, and right. And so what we were able to do was show you the growth for those different groups of students. And you saw that it was in green because they had significant growth, which is what's expected for an English language learner who is not going to be proficient in English in their first year learning the language. It's just not going to happen, right? And so we were able to show you the growth. So that's how we know in measuring, how we know we're making progress and moving in the right direction with those particular students. But we started with that group because that group happens to be the 2 groups that we are struggling with as a district. And I think the whole city struggled with that group. Let's just be honest. L's and students with IEPs have always been a struggle citywide. Why? We're trying to get at the root cause of it. So in that root cause that FIG has been doing with the school, with those schools, she's also gone into thinking about how do we use SDI, which is specifically design instruction. How are we looking at the IEP? How are we really taking the information out of there and placing it in our planning for the specific students that we're targeting, while also understanding what is the language objective to support that student in developing the language, while also understanding the content at the same time. Because again, those students are already having issues with the content and processing it, let alone understanding it in the language. And so she's been posing that achievement gap for those students, and I'm hoping to present that information in either the May or the June conference so that you guys can have specifics about her work. I'm actually going to invite her to actually present it to you. She's presenting it tonight or Thursday night. She's presenting it to Bank Street. I'm hoping for her to present the same information to you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's good.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to our high school report. Brett? You want to share?
Hi, co-pilot. Oh, good evening, District Attorney. It is, gosh, the end of April, crazy. Looking at your wardrobe, thinking maybe spring will stick this time. For folks I haven't met, my name is Yuet. I'm the executive. I'm the director of the North High School with Superintendent Janice Ross. Yes. And for folks who are new to us, Brooklyn North High Schools serves 7 districts. From the Brooklyn Bridge to the Spring Creek Gateway Mall. We are 26,000 students, 47 schools. About 80% of our students are Latinx or African, and about 80% of our students are economically disadvantaged. We are 42 high schools and 5 secondary schools, including Park Slope, Livinghead, over at the John Jay campus. Next slide, please. And as a high school district, our goal is to put forth young adults who have the skills to be on a pathway towards economic success. Next slide. Each month, Janice sends a love letter through the DOE messaging app, which we love very much. This goes out to our students, staff, and parents. And Earlier in April, we shouted out our schools for their work around Women's History Month, and we were preparing for some fun events in April. Next slide, please. One of which was our second annual One Brooklyn SUNY Fair. Tremendous gratitude to our colleagues over at SUNY. They brought all 40 campuses. They brought staff, they brought swag, they brought alumni, they brought current students. They ran workshops all day for our kids around financial aid, around how to get help in college. And I think we rounded out at about 1,200 students who attended throughout the day. And we tell our students all the time about the big world out there, and it's nice to be able to bring the world to them. And this day certainly achieved that goal. Next slide, please. And then on the flip side, we had a ton of D15 families. Thank you, Deirdre, who did some tremendous marketing for us. But this year we combined a Science Expo with a recruitment fair. And this is just a few examples of our student scientists. We have one representing each school, and they tackled everything from terraforming on Mars to the bottom left, which is a do-it-yourself rat prevention kit that apparently has caught the interest of some investors. So now apparently there's a website where you can purchase the thing that was invented by that young man in the second row on the far right from EVT High School as his environmental science research project. And then the two young ladies on the bottom actually presented their project to the UN at see that box on the bottom left with all the duct tape and it's a do-it-yourself rat prevention kit. I know, right? I'll get you guys the link. Apparently they met the, I forget her name, she was a former DOE person. He actually met the mayor's rat Tsarina, and she was very impressed because it was low cost and do it yourself. But the young ladies on the bottom right, kind of tying back to the theme of Women's History Month, did a kind of a public information campaign for their peers around the health implications of birth control. Because they're also part of My Sister's Keeper and really wanted to have a conversation at their school, which is the Maxwell CTE High School, around women's health. So super proud of them. Next slide, please. And then this is an invitation that we've sent out. This is Thursday night. We're partnering with the Morningside Center for Social Responsibility to host a virtual workshop. This is in Zoom. They're doing 2 workshops for us this spring. This Thursday is Understanding the Adolescent Brain. So those of you with middle school kids, you may find this useful. It will be simultaneously translated in Spanish and Mandarin. And then in early June, we're offering a workshop for caregivers, kind of but it's about balancing the joys and stresses. When we talk about how love shows up in Brooklyn North High Schools, we are inclusive of our students, our staff, and the adults who love our students. So these workshops are our spring gifts. And as of this morning, we had more than 70 parents registered for Thursday. So we're really excited about that. And all are welcome. So this is on our website. Shanice will share the deck with you all. So feel free to join us. Once you register through this link, you'll get a confirmation with the Zoom link. You know, it's kind of like, I like listening on these things, kind of listening to the radio while I'm doing other stuff. But it's pretty powerful to have a community of people thinking about these topics together. So District 15 is more than welcome to join us. Next slide, please. And then each month we try to dig into one of our DCEP priorities. And one of our other districts had asked us to share more about our mid-year success with the ELA regents because we had met our DCEP goal by the January regents. Still working towards our kids demonstrating college and career readiness levels on the regents. But to share with you all a little bit about how Brooklyn North High Schools prepare students for success in the regents, actually brought you guys a real life high school English teacher. Seneca Sanders, come on up. Seneca teaches 10th grade English at Brooklyn High School for Law and Technology, which is where our superintendency lives. And for 10 years now, you always know what Seneca's teaching because the kids will run around the hallways and shout about Desdemona, and you're acting like Iago right now. But in addition to like kind of doing fun, sexy things like that, his kids rock the regents. So I wanted him to share a little bit about his approach. You know, we love all our teachers. Seneca's going to present his approach to the ELA.
Should I ideally sit in the chair or how?
Wherever you want.
You know what? Sure, haven't done it this way. Why not try something new? Experimentation works. Admittedly, I mean, things are on slides, but I haven't been using the slides much lately, so I'll just talk.
Yeah, well, she's gonna advance and we can decide.
Okay, I mean, if you want to flip through to a few, I mean, that's myself. I've been at this teaching thing for about 10 years now. And exciting lifestyle. That's it's genuinely never a dull day under any circumstance. And let's keep on flipping. Okay, that works.
Do I click in for your slide then?
I mean, don't worry. I was gonna say, because there's a lot there and I kind of jump around to make it a little bit more concise. Like a true English teacher, we never know when to shut up. That's just how it works. So you can just go back to the original. That's perfectly fine. Yes, Othello is kind of what I've become famous for. Namely because every year we start off Othello and kids say, I don't want to do Shakespeare. I don't want to do Shakespeare because everybody has PTSD from Romeo and Juliet for some reason. And then we started and they're like, really? This is what we're reading? Once we start arguing about gender norms, and once we start arguing about the expectations of women back then, and then I start asking questions about whether or not the gender expectations have changed since then, and the kids actually have to go, actually, not really. Suddenly, now we're pondering. Now we're in the world of Shakespeare for a moment. And for weeks, that's where they live when they're in my room. They're in Shakespeare land. And in a book that every single year, every kid tells me they want nothing to do with on day one. They refuse to stop reading it. I get copies stolen because kids want to reread it. I have kids that now went on to college and wanted to read more Shakespeare because they took to Othello that much. And this year, I actually didn't even infuse any of the films with it, and the kids got even more hype than they ever had. So I was like, wow, and I always say my rule is if my students don't like it, I will stop teaching it. So at the end of the unit, I say, so am I teaching this next year or what? And they say, you better. And that's how it works. My engagement strategies are simple. I know where my kids are. I know where my kids are from, and that's how I use it. I take the trains my kids take, so I know what their commute looks like. I go to the local bodegas that the kids are gonna get their food from, so I know who all the employees are at all the local places. If I walk into that place and one of my kids has been cutting classes or hiding out somewhere, the managers will be like, hey, over there. This is what it is. Like, it happens all the time because I know the community, I know the environment that my kids come from. And I use that knowledge as best I can within the course of teaching my lessons. So it's like if I'm in my classroom, one thing my kids have also get a little nervous about. I'm known for grabbing phones when I see them because I need their attention. But oftentimes before I grab a phone, If a kid is really intently watching something, I might move my eye by there and just see what they're watching. Maybe I might even ask a question. What you taking a look at? What's so interesting about this? Now I've invested a little bit of time into what they like, and if I can figure out something about it, now I can take some information from that, do some Googles, maybe watch an episode or two, maybe infuse an image or two from that show into a slide, and now I've shown their interest for a little bit longer. The amount, like, my classroom artwork is like Dragon Ball Z references, Kobe Bryant, LeBron, any new good Marvel movie. The kids go nuts when they walk in and they're like, "You got that poster," and now they want to talk about it. And then I only put it up there if I can say, "Remember that character we're talking about? That character does this in a similar way as this character does this." And now we're talking about it. Now, usually that's an engagement strategy to bring them in. And once they are in and they're actually listening to me, they're actually following along, that's when I do something that I want parents to pay attention to, because one of these things is something I'll tell parents, this is a takeaway. I would argue that most of what I do when it comes to getting kids where I need them to be prepared for the Regents, like a lot of those skills, parents could do this in any conversation. One thing I do is kids hate reading out loud. They despise it. It's automatically triggering them into believing that I'm trying to embarrass them. So all I ever say to them is, give me a sentence. Just give me one sentence. And usually in that sentence, I'm gonna have to listen very carefully if I can actually get them to read it. Because in giving me that sentence, I'm listening for where you stumble. Because a stumble tells me, the way you stumble tells me the way you read. Because most students are going to stumble in one of two ways. They're either going to remove the word that they don't know from the sentence and read the sentence without that word, which is going to ruin their comprehension because they're reading it without a word. Or they're going to see the word they don't know, read the first two letters, and replace it with another word they know that begins with the same two letters, which once again ruins their comprehension of the sentence, because why would they comprehend it with the wrong word? If they can effectively navigate that sentence, let's read the next sentence. How about the next one? Now you can summarize it in the margin, and now we're making progress. But those stumble words, that's what parents should pay attention to, because reading with your child a page of any book, honestly, will take you 5 to 10 minutes top. If you have an especially struggling reader, no more than 20 minutes will take you just to get through one page. And with that information, now you know what you can go to the teacher about. Now you know how you can speak. Okay, I'm noticing my kid stumbled over XYZ words and is struggling here. What are we doing that's working with this? And then we can build from that. The other thing I'll say to parents, summarizing is an essential skill they're going to need for the ELA, and our kids, they're struggling tremendously with summary. Now, believe it or not, I found out of nowhere, I thought about it. I was like, actually, this tactic could work. When your kids watch a TV show or read a book, I mean, anything they do to take in any new entertainment, they tell you that they saw something. Ask them about the show, but ask them specifically to summarize it. And when they're summarizing it, take out your phone and put a timer on for 30 seconds. They should be able to give you a summary in 30 seconds. If it takes them longer than 30 seconds, it's not a summary. They're just throwing out every detail. They're regurgitating the plot out to you. And at 30 seconds, stop the clock. No, you're not summarizing. You're telling me the plot. I asked for a summary. In order to give you the summary, they're going to have to cut off the details that aren't as important, which will make them have to summarize it. That's a little thing that you could do in 2 minutes after they've watched something or read something you can watch them have to go through the critical thinking of making the story go through 30 seconds and not 31. It's that serious. Do anything like that, and I promise you, you will see where they're struggling. You could see where they're strong. And it can help you sort of work as an ally to your child's teacher so that you know what it is you should be expecting to hear come parent-teacher conference night. You know what you should be hearing when it comes to talking about their grades and how they're performing. I mean, those kind of basic things, that's sort of what gets their attention. That's what helps me work with them after I've done the engagement strategy and pulling them in and getting their attention. That's about it. Any questions or anything?
My statement is, I wish you were my teacher. And you probably would have been president. Doing an exception. Well, especially with the attention span now being about 1 second.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Teacher, the excellence. I'm curious as to how can we put your concepts and your methodologies into some type of a way we could teach other teachers. Not to put shame on teachers.
I mean, I was gonna say, the timing of that is rather hilarious because I actually just finished doing my own admin license. I just finished my process off like recently. So
Actually, not until you finish this meeting.
basically, yeah, like this is.
You guys hope it's future.
But I do enjoy the idea of working with other teachers. I have many times where I sit with other teachers and discuss little things. Like they see some of the methods I use, and I give them tips, and oftentimes they give me ideas. And I work, and oftentimes I'll say to administration, I tried this and this thing worked. Because yes, I tend to be rather popular among my students, but it's also because my students know that I'm trying to engage them. If I'm making a mistake, and trust me, all this is trial and error. A lot of these don't always work, and I work around it. I'll ask kids about what's going, all right, was that a good idea? Should I change this one? And we just kind of work it from there. It's a game of culturally responsive teaching, which I only use air quotes. See, now you're gonna preach. I only use air quotes because the unfortunate mistake of culturally responsive teaching, the way that we typically talk about it, is that we look at culturally responsive teaching as let's give them a book where the person looks like them. That's a great idea in theory, but we are substituting, we're kind of ignoring the identity of the kid for the sake of the race or ethnic background of the kid. Notice how when I said that I put posters up in my room, I didn't say Black artists. I said LeBron James, I said Kobe Bryant, I said anime, I said Marvel. These are athletes and entertainers and entertainment mediums that they connect with. Now, yes, some of them happen to be Black. Awesome. Meanwhile, I was so hyped when Marvel made an Asian superhero. I was eager to put it on my wall so that I could discuss how great the movie was. I could make it connect. That's the key. So if we're going to talk about how to do these things, we just have to make sure teachers learn how to connect with the identity of our kids. First, that's like the number one thing. Learn to watch things they watch, read what they read, and we can basically start there.
Cool.
That's like, sorry, talking on a term, the key way to connect to your teenagers too.
I mean, I wish I could make it sound, more difficult than that, but that's the only way I kind of know how to do it. Anything else?
I don't have any questions. Thank you so much. It was fantastic. You have a method acting kind of, it's like you're a method teacher. It's a method acting.
Admittedly, teaching Shakespeare works for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The rest of it's boring. The rest of it's
just what's happening in some of our schools in your district. You can take a look at it when you have a chance. The thing that Seneca does, because he's tired and he's sick and he's here anyways. Okay. But on the summary slides, one of the things that Seneca does is he takes all of this work and this investment into making each kid feeling seen, heard, and affirmed. And he turns it into, how do you look at the ELA rubric and feel that you can do it? This idea of like sitting next to a student while they're stumbling is coaching them through so that when they're sitting, whether it's the ELA or the global or the AP exam or IB, like our high school kids, IB exams have started, AP starting in 2 weeks. We're deep into this, and the idea of persistence and resilience. And I personally learned this from Daria Rigney, who was a District 2 superintendent, who was a resident of District 15. She said, if you have the privilege of sitting next to a student while they're struggling and you get to walk them through it, it is the privilege of a lifetime, because so many of our kids get to those points and no one's there. No one's there to say, you, Antonia, have it in you to get past this. Keep breathing, keep pushing. He does that.
I was gonna say, every time I do this, she reminds me of what I didn't say. It's just a logical, and test taking is nothing. Overwhelming, taking an exam has very little to do. I mean, it does have to be what you know. But if you know it, but don't believe that you know it, then you're going to sit there. You're going to say, I know this answer, but do I know? I mean, my students took a bunch of students took the SAT today.
Yes.
All I said to them was, number one rule, be confident. Be confident. Multiple choice is all about confidence, nothing else. Because if you tell yourself you know the answer, believing yourself, you're probably going to be right. That's just how it works.
Should we go to comments?
Yeah. So any questions or comments for Seneca or US from people joining us in person? Anybody on Zoom who has a question or comment?
There is no question on the language line, on the Spanish line, sorry.
And there's no question from Bengali line as well.
Okay, so far no question from Mandarin line.
The comment. It's a very nice comment.
Yes, the comment was, this is Mr. Sanders for you. Excellent, lucky students. Thank you very much. And we all echo that as well. See, I know we did some CEC questions, comments. Kwame, anything else you wanted to add? Donaldo? Nancy?
Excellent. I have a daughter who's just now reading, Shakespeare, and it's like, can't connect to it. I was an English literature major, you know, so it's like, I'm just passionate in different angles, but anyway, we said a lot of important things, one of the most important things and where they're at, as individuals, that's not easy, but, you know, it's work, and you do it with passion, so that, hey, let's reproduce you. A lot of teachers doing a lot of great work, and this was really great to hear this, so thank you so much. And I just wanted to also mention that I'm really excited that you're having a workshop on understanding adolescence. Like that was like that's like the one about toddlers, the ground, you know, shifting for me and learning about adolescence and things like these aliens, like, sorry. From how I think, and once you understand it, it's like all pieces. Like, so that's really great. I wish we could just spread it out beyond, like, you know, bronze, everywhere else.
Katina?
No, just thank you. My kids are still younger and I love hearing about what's happening in the high schools. For me, it's a really valuable window as a parent to And thank you so much. One thing that really resonated with me about your approach is how much specificity there is in the decisions that you're making, in going to the delis that students are going to, in all of it, the choices that you're making about the media to bring in. I think that kind of care, no matter how many workshops you give to other teachers, that kind of care is, I think it's really deep and individual. Thank you.
Thank you, Seneca, and you went for bringing Seneca. My question is, given that we are going to be hiring so many new teachers, what are they doing at the high school level to recruit or encourage people to start themselves on that path?
So, excellent question. Happy to report that part of the Future Ready initiative that Chancellor Banks started so they didn't have it the first year, but last year we advocated for a teacher educator track because we have a high school teachers prep in District 23. And I believe currently there are 11 schools in New York City public schools that are part of Future Ready in the teacher education track. So that's kind of like one of our grow our own. Amy Way and the Division of Human Resources has recently, they've combined a couple, there were teams everywhere working on this problem. There were teams in teaching and learning working on retention. There were teams at 65 Court Street working on recruitment. There were teams somewhere else working on teacher leadership. And just very recently, they were all brought under Amy's leadership, and she is incredible. She and I have been having this conversation since 2006. So there's now a whole continuum, and they're partnering with districts like Raphael and us in thinking about what they're calling the recruitment to retention continuum. The para educator program is being kind of refurbished, where paraprofessionals can pursue teacher accreditation. I believe it's free, masters and licensing. There's also now Ed Prep NYC, which I believe any employee of New York City Public Schools can apply to this program and learn to be a teacher while they're becoming a teacher. We've expanded student-teacher relationships. So that is now open to, Amy's team is creating district connections. So historically, universities work directly with schools. So it's like Liz Phillips, lots and lots and lots of student teachers, and other schools may not. And right now, we are working on a district strategy. So for example, in Brooklyn North High Schools, there are schools that everyone wants to teach is at, Millennium, a couple of blocks away. And there are schools where you need to take 2 buses and 2 trains to get to. And until I figure out how to build free housing for teachers, it's a challenge, right? It's a real challenge. So now we're looking at how do we recruit from that community? And I'm talking about Spring Creek, right? I'm talking about neighborhoods that need to think about this problem as an intergenerational challenge. And our community partners are amazing. So I believe it's the Brownsville Education Development Corporation is going to start a teacher preparation program within their community office. So lots of ways. I was recently interviewed about this, and one thing I said was, once upon a time, we used to recruit talent from overseas. I remember we're like, yeah, Donaldo remembers. I think there were a few years where we were from the Philippines, Dominican Republic, West Indies. Probably impossible in this climate, but they there is talent out there, so we just need to think of other ways to connect. And then for us, and I'm sure Rafael will be happy to talk about it, for us as districts, we're reflecting on like, what does our data show? So for Brooklyn North High Schools, we're actually really proud that we've been outperforming the city in hiring men of color. Our proportion of African-American students in our schools matches the proportion of African-American teachers, which is unheard of in New York City. And the country. So we're really proud of that. But when we dug into the data, we saw that we don't have that parity in our Latino male teachers. So as the recruitment and retention girl for Brooklyn North High Schools, now I'm pushing Amy and her team to help us think about, so where are the prep programs that are targeting this population of adults that we want to put in front of our kids? And then also looking at our schools as we're graduating students into the workforce or into college, how do we retain students and convince them to become teachers? And there's actually an international school in District 13, and I can send you guys the article. Kathleen Rucker has done an amazing job of recruiting her own students and has kind of become a model of how to do this. I think 30% of her staff were former students. So it is possible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the product of parents who are New York City public school teachers, and my dad grew up in East New York and went to boys high, boys high, not boys and girls high back then, and then went to CUNY because CUNY was free back then. And the fact that CUNY was free, it created a generation of teachers who went back and taught in their neighborhoods. He went on from there to Bushwick. So I don't know how to convince the city to make CUNY free again.
But we're gonna end there because that means it is possible.
It is possible.
It is possible.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you. And two quick comments. One is just on Antonia's question. I just know New Jersey and what they're doing better than New York, just because of my job. But I know Newark has started recently having a guarantee for students who do their student teaching in Newark that if it is successful, they're guaranteed a job and they'll also provide housing. And, there are all these incentives to have people coming out of teacher prep programs to come to the community. And I think that it's, innovative ways, especially if you're thinking about the communities in Brooklyn that transportation is more difficult, that maybe those are the communities that you can incentivize in some ways and just getting creative, but just other things to think about. And then my last point was, because of Seneca's amazing presentation, was hoping maybe we could start bringing more teachers to our meetings and just hearing about the amazing work there. I mean, because not that I don't love hearing from UN and principals, but I just think I love teachers. And I think if we could even every few months bring a teacher and to talk about the amazing work they're doing, I think the district would benefit.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just so you know, we have the next thing on our agenda is a resolution on
Yes,
PSOL.
I got the message.
Okay, you don't,
I'm gonna sit down now.
okay. We have a surprise guest, Orlando Ross from Congress member Yvette Clark. So come on up. Thank you so much for waiting through all of that.
So I wanted to thank CEC, Ms. Martinelli and Superintendent Oliveris for bringing us all here together. I work for Congresswoman Yvette Clark. She is the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. And she is the spear that is actually going against what we see what's going on with the Department of Education, DEI, all of the crazy things that are going on in federal government. However, even with there being clouds, there are silver linings in the cloud. And our office is still, and we're doing a congressional app challenge. Last year, we had maximum capacity and we did it at Medgar Evers College. This particular program promotes STEAM and STEM education. And it prepares students to be problem solvers, to come up with different apps. If they win the app challenge, what we do is that we get them into the hackathon first. Get their feet wet in the hackathon. Then after the hackathon, they graduate to taking the app challenge. Whoever wins gets to go to Washington, DC, and gets to have their apps shown, not just to their friends, but to the whole entire nation. So these are things that the Congresswoman is adamant about protecting our education. We've also, I was listening in the back that you guys are going to be hiring. So last year we did a job fair, and also this year we did a job fair at City Tech. And we did a congressional job fair where we were able to attract over 2,000 people for the year before and about 1,500. We did a workshop we did workforce development on energy, green energy, and how to position or reposition our constituents to take these new energy jobs. We recently just did another Earth Day event at Brooklyn College, where we had students came in and we had a big forum about new policies in energy, geothermal, electrification, affordability with electricity. We had people talking about recyclable energies, recyclable protocols, and also we had a good number of people in the room. I'm here to be a partner or collaborator with you guys in case there's some stuff that's going down. Unfortunately, at one time, Congresswoman had Park Slope, but because of the redistricting, we only have like 1 or 2. So what I'd like to do, we'll be connecting with you, Ms. Martinelli, with any events that we're doing. If there's a job fair coming up, we just recently did another job fair, also city, state, and federal, at the Brooklyn Library, Central Library, and it was a phenomenal success. So it's the thing is that we can work with each other to amplify what's going on in the district. But the number one thing we want to let you guys know is really try to see if you're not in our app challenge, you probably be either in Dan Goldman's app challenge or you'll be in Hakeem Jeffries or Nydia Velasquez. Definitely try to get the students to get involved in that. And that will be something that they'll be able to do. And that's about it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure meeting you. All right, so I think then we are going to move on to this peaceful resolution.
Do we have a forum to vote?
Oh,
We do. We have more.
We do.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So that I will wait to. Okay, you put it in my question. Thank you for pointing that up. So this resolution was written by Camille Casaretti. And she is going to present this at the PEC tomorrow. I don't think we just met tomorrow.
She's coming back.
She's back. Okay, so we're gonna proceed to read this. Camille, are you on the line?
I am.
Camille.
Hello,
I'm
everyone.
gonna share my screen. Okay, do you want to say anything about the resolution, Camille, before we start reading it, or?
I'll give you like a high level of why this resolution was written. Basically, in 2018, a group of Black and Latinx DOE students filed a class action lawsuit called Jimenez versus DOE. accusing that the PSAL program didn't allow for Black and Latinx students to access after-school sports activities. So rather than go through the court process, the DOE proposed a settlement that would increase the number of high school students who play or would be able to play high school sports in the PSAL over a period 2021 through 2024. So that period just ended this past summer. The goals of the settlement are laid out in the resolution, but you should know that as of the summer, they were not met. And so when we found out that Miriam from CEC 13 and I actually put this resolution together. So there are still Black and Latinx students who are not gaining access to these important opportunities and extracurricular activities. The high school sports are more than just fun, more than just healthy exercise, more than way to learn teamwork. Sports can be an entry into college for many of our students. When opportunities are not made available for whatever reason, be it the location, seat quantities, or just the simple understanding of the process, we need to do better. This resolution was an attempt to create more transparency around the process, like the way schools offer PSAL opportunities, when tryouts are, and other important dates are occurring, and to improve communications between the schools and with families and students. So the resolution does not solve all of the problems. The DOE is still working towards ensuring that this settlement is met towards their goals. And I think that passing this resolution helps to hold them accountable to that, just ensures that all eyes are on this and asks that they improve their processes so that as they're increasing seats, the children who need to have access are aware of how and when to receive it. So now I said a lot, but go ahead.
Thank you so much, Camille. All right, I think I'm just going to read it. Resolution on improving the PSOL system in New York City for greater transparency, access, and support of student needs. This resolution aims to strengthen the PSOL system, promote transparency, and ensure that every student has an equal opportunity to thrive through sports and extracurricular activities within New York City public schools. Whereas competitive extramural sports play a crucial role in the physical, social, and emotional development of students across New York City by providing them with access to extracurricular sports programs, whereas the Public Schools Athletic League, PSAL, coordinates competitions for 25 sports over 45,000 students from over 400 schools in New York City. Whereas the mission of PSAL is to provide opportunities for educating students in physical fitness, character development, and socialization skills through an athletic program that fosters teamwork, discipline, and sportsmanship. Whereas many Black and Latinx students and expressed concerns that the process for applying to PSAL does not adequately meet the evolving needs of children in the New York City public school system, particularly regarding accessibility, communication, and transparency. Whereas the lawsuit Moises Jimenez et al. Versus New York City Department of Education et al. Index number 155825/2008 was filed by a group of Black and Latinx students who attend New York City Public Department of Education high schools. They wanted greater opportunities to play after-school sports and believed that the PSAL needed to change its policies and practices to make this happen. Whereas in 2022, New York City Public Schools agreed to a settlement in which they would expand the shared access programs, or SAPs, add a minimum of 200 new PSAL teams total by spring semester 2024 to specified school districts that have the lowest citywide average access to lowest citywide average access to PSAL sports teams and add a minimum of 5 teams to each of the 2021-22, 22-23 and school years. To specified individual DOE high schools, they will target those high schools with the fewest PSAL sports teams that for geographic or other reasons cannot participate in SAP. Hire 6 full-time athletic director coordinators and 1 scheduler to oversee these new sports teams. Create a system that students and parents can use to provide real-time comments on how the new sports programs are going. Whereas to have access to their desired sports teams, many New York City high school students must travel to nearby schools, whereas PSAL existence as a ruling organization for all sports issues in New York City public high schools is often unknown to the majority of students, guardians, and families in the New York City public schools because schools are responsible for distributing information to families. Whereas PSAL deadlines and timelines, tryout schedules, and important updates are unclear, leading to confusion and missed opportunities for students and families. Whereas greater transparency regarding timelines, deadlines, and program details would enable families to make more information decisions about their children's participation in PSAL activities, ensuring that all students have equitable access to these opportunities. Therefore, be it resolved that the PSAL system in New York City should implement significant changes to improve the way it communicates with schools about programs, deadlines, and timelines. Be it resolved that the PSAL website be updated to clearly outline all important deadlines, timelines, and information with an accessible calendar for upcoming events, tryouts, and registration deadlines. Be it resolved that schools will inform students, parents, and guardians about which teams are available in their schools and in nearby schools, important deadlines, updates, or changes to PSAL programs and events, ensuring timely communication. And the next one I added based on Denalda's comments. So Denalda, take a look at it, comment. Be it resolved that the Office of Wellness, Physical Education collaborate more actively with the PSAL to ensure that students have access to all opportunities available, guided, informed, and supported by physical education teachers. Be it resolved that New York City Public Schools should work to better assess and meet the needs of students, especially Black and Latinx students, by engaging with parents, guardians, and school administrators to collect feedback and make necessary improvements to the programs it offers. And be it resolved that the New York City Public Schools provide the resources and support needed to implement these changes effectively, ensuring that the PSAL system is more transparent, responsive, and accessible for all students and their families.
So any comments or questions from people joining us in person? Any comments or questions from anybody joining us on Zoom?
There is no question on the Spanish line. Thank you.
There's no question from Bengali line. Thank you.
No question from Mandarin line.
Let's go to CEC questions, comments, Kwame? No question. Donalda?
Awesome.
Nancy? Steven? Tony?
No.
Hello.
Camille doing incredible work as always.
Thank you. I actually had something I wanted to talk about because in the goals, one of the goals that they were supposed to meet for District 15 specifically, District 15 was supposed to have at least one SAP by spring 2022 and at least 5 by the spring of 2023. So now I don't know if this happened or not. I was wondering if you might have any information about additional PSAL opportunities that were created in District 15.
Not District 15, but I can confirm that, so SAP that Camille refers to is a shared program across different schools. We were asked to work on one for District 16 and one for District 32. And District
Okay,
14.
because I think 14, 15, and 16 were supposed to be together as the shared district. So if it got placed in 16, that makes sense. Just wondering if the District 15 students were able to take advantage of that.
So we
I
weren't
mean, you
asked to
probably
work-
don't know these details.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we weren't asked to work on District 15. I think they might have had a different solution. I think because we only have John Jay campus, and
Right.
for a campus that already has a shared program is not being asked to combine with another campus. So I'm not sure, but Camille, do you know the person who's working on this? Because I can put you in touch with her, the one who's doing all the data analysis, whose name I'm
No,
too tired to.
I don't know a woman that's doing it. Nope. Mm-mm.
Let's have this conversation offline. Maybe you can update us on this the next,
Yeah, or we can have PSAL come and update you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's actually. a
That would be
project-
even better.
Yeah, happy to connect you.
Okay, I want to make a motion.
I move to vote.
Okay, Jonathan. And I'll second. You want to call the roll there? Antonia Farrar? Yes. Leslie King? Yes. Nancy King? Yes. Katina Rogers? Yes. Jonathan Davis?
Yes.
Denal Honey? Yes. And Kwame Egerton?
Yes.
All right, and with that, we have 7 yes, and it is passed. Yay. Okay. All right, I have to just do general public comment.
Any general public comments? People here in person? Any general public comments? People joining on Zoom? Camille?
I just wanted to invite you all to the PEP meeting tomorrow night at Sunset Park High School. Since it's in District 15, I hope that many of you will be able to join. There is a contract item that feels somewhat controversial. It's an emergency contract that the DOE put into place because they seem to miss a deadline that they shouldn't have missed. And this is for scanning equipment in schools. I'm not sure if any of it is going into District 15, but it's an opportunity to speak about how these procurement contracts operate, because we stand to lose $40,000 because of missing a deadline and not realizing that a city contract exists that the DOE could have taken advantage of. And with money being what it is, $40,000 can pay somebody's salary. And so it's just really unfortunate. And then, of course, there's also the other issue about the school to prison pipeline with these metal detectors. So if anybody has a feeling about that and they would like to come share their feedback, you can do that in person. There's, the chancellor is always at the PEP meetings. And so it's a really good opportunity to have her hear what is top of mind. Different than the chancellor town halls, where the public doesn't really get an opportunity to actually have their voice heard, literally. So There's also a school that is being proposed to open, Central Brooklyn Literacy Academy. It's a school for children that are having reading challenges, and it's going to be open to all of Central Brooklyn. And so that is something that you all should know about if you didn't know already. They are servicing some students with dyslexia. So this is great news because Tony and I, many years ago, worked on a resolution saying that, you know, we needed schools that could help our students on the autism spectrum and also students with reading and learning disabilities like dyslexia. And so finally coming to fruition. I just want to, you know, give you all some encouragement that if you're staying in this work for the long haul, you're going to see a lot of successes. And if you're not staying in for the long haul, thank you for your service, because everyone who is sitting at that table is planting seeds and you are greatly appreciated. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Is that it?
I think I have no other comments.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to adjournment at 9:18. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you in May, our business meeting, May 13th at 131 Livingston Street. Have a wonderful Tuesday night. And vote for CEC elections. Tell your friends to vote.
I haven't missed anything. I already.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
Okay, good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Good night. Thank you. Thank you.